Hi everyone, Team Nona Never here, bringing you immediate reaction to today's transfer news. It's been a busy day in the world of player reveal videos, but before we get on to that, we are going to be speaking to our panellists, George Poole and Richard Steele, looking at today's signing of Zeki Amdouni from FC Basel. Um, 22 years old, striker, 5-year deal, we understand, signing fee of around 19 million to 20 million, depending on what reports you hear. We understand that he's more natural in that number 10 role, particularly if he's got two very good wide men to either side of him. But apparently he can play in all four of those front positions, which is very, very pleasing because we've got some versatility up there up front. Under 21 star at the under 21 Euros. He scored 26 goals for club and country. Bit of a slow start last season, but set himself absolutely flying in the second half of the season. And he scored 5 goals in 5 for his national team. Rich, straight over to you. This is not the kind of signing that Burnley are used to. So what is your immediate reaction, I guess?
Yeah, I think the immediate reaction is obviously when you see somebody signing, you're kind of like, right, okay, never heard of him, because that seems to be the way with Burnley. And then I think we always like to dig a little bit deeper into the signing. Various Twitter accounts that you look at have given nothing but positive reactions. There's a Twitter account called Scouted Football, and this one said 2023 has been huge for Amdouni. 25 goals in 34 games in the last 6 months alone, including 5 in his first 4 for Switzerland, elevated a promising season, and that was in June. And obviously, he got in the team at the tournament in the Euro 21s. And when you look at the players on that list, there's some really highly rated young promising players. And I think when you see the reaction on Twitter, when you're like, how would Burnley manage to pull this off? Well, this could be signing of the summer. When you see Basel fans saying, wow, okay, great signing for Burnley. I'm not sure if it's the right career direction. They're almost like it could have gone higher than us. So I think that just shows the pull that Kompany's got. I listened to his interview today. Bless him, the young man's English isn't the best, is it? But he battled through. And, he was saying that the coach is the main draw, isn't it? And I think that'll be the case when we see Trafford and Redmond come through the door, which, we're going to discuss. So I think it's a really exciting one. I think, obviously, our friend Sasha kind of said he's a far better option than Mikatadze. And it seems like we might have paid a little bit more. But, yeah. But you kind of do wonder if Mikatadze was always a smokescreen all along.
That's true.
Have we been putting his name out in the media more and more to kind of get this deal done under the radar? Because it certainly has gone under the radar, hasn't it? It's kind of been one of them where fee agreed, bang, 2 days later, he's signed. So I think listen, you can never just say never with signings. This is the beauty of it, isn't it? When you sign someone like Nick Poole, you think, oh, he's just going to be a number 2 or 3 goal, and he turns out to be one of maybe the best keeper we've ever had. But you look at this signing and you really feel it could be a real game changer for us. And I know you can't just go off YouTube clips. But I did watch a clip against Italy's under 21s, and I was like, wow, this lad has got something, the way he manipulates the ball. Listen, this is a big statement, but it does remind you of Messi a little bit, the way he moves with the ball. I know that is a massive statement, but the way he does move with it, and he can turn. And I always like a player who can take the ball on the half turn, because that's very difficult for defenders to predict. So, yeah, it's a real exciting signing, and I think it's just an indication of how Burnley Football Club is moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's pick up on that, George, because that was definitely one of the points that I wanted us to focus on. We've seen some of the reaction over social media today saying like he won't play for Burnley very long, and it being a ridiculous coup by Vincent Kompany and a beast of a player. These are just some of the fan reactions that we've seen coming out of him for a player who 48 hours ago we knew nothing of. Let's pick up that point that Rich said about the pull of Vincent Kompany. You and I heard a lot of it last season, particularly with our association with the fan advisory board. We hear promising reports that players are contacting us rather than us having to go the other way around. But Kompany has said himself in the announcement video that it's a player that he's had on his radar for some time. Talk us through how you feel our transfer activity is being shaped by the manager and our, I guess, willingness to go into a European market that's untapped and that we don't know.
Yeah, I think if we were to take the full perspective on this, I think it predates Kompany in some aspects. I remember, when even just a simple thing of signing Maxwell Cornet and Cornet coming in, hitting the ground running, and as a player that we wouldn't have usually been linked with and usually have signed previously, him doing well only shone the club in good light. And I remember, like, it's way in the past now, so I'm sure it's not an issue for us to say, but when Cornet came to the club were fielding phone calls from other players from the Ivory Coast international team who then wanted to come and play for Burnley alongside Cornet. So that's just a show of how just one signing can make Burnley so much more attractive to another market. And then you add Kompany on top of that. We've obviously gone into a completely different scouting market just last summer, just simply for the fact that Kompany arrived to the club late.
Yeah.
The scouting that he'd done was in Belgium for Anderlecht, and it made sense to just transfer them targets over to Burnley instead of for Anderlecht. So it was almost a case of necessity to begin with. But then once we found that, we've been able to sign players for cheap from abroad, far cheaper than we'd sign any player from England, and then you get that return on that investment, and it's a no-brainer, really. Then you add Kompany into the mix as a person. You've got a Premier League legend, notorious as one of the hardest working coaches in Europe. He's worked under Guardiola. He clearly models his team basically on what Guardiola modelled his team off Cruyff. That you can see that line coming through to Kompany. So it's not a surprise that players are just dying to come and play for Kompany, because look, if you're taking a long-term view, if you're a player, you think, right, I'll go to Burnley and play for Kompany. If I impress, further down the line, wherever Kompany ends up, perhaps I'll go with him.
My God,
because I think we all
not
know
thought of that.
Kompany's going to go to City within 5-6 years, unless Arteta goes there. So, for these 20-year-olds who are coming in, perhaps they've got an eye on the future, and look, it only benefits us in the meantime. So yeah, for all the word I'm getting from the club is that Kompany is an incredible draw, and despite we've struggled to get some signings over the line this summer, it's nothing to do with that really. It's more to do with financial agents messing people about and whatnot. So I think it'll only stand us in even greater stead now we've gone to the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Rich, let's look at where he thinks we're going to slot into this side. Clearly, he's bought this lad with the intention that he's going to be a starter. I can't see him coming in being a squad player or even a bench player. That leaves us with, how many does that leave us with? We've got Jay, we've got Foster, Obafemi, Wout, and now Amdouni. That's it, isn't it? That's just the 5 strikers. Knowing that Amdouni can play naturally as a number 10, but anywhere across the front forward positions, I guess, where are you now looking at our strike force in terms of what options we've got and who we think our preferred starting players are going to be?
Yeah, I don't think he'll play number 10 for us. I think he'll go into that kind of like more of a number 9 position and a bit of person who leads the line for us. Unless Kompany maybe changes formation a little bit, but we'll see that. We'll see how that progresses as the season starts. But yeah, I think he'll just be our number 9, and we'll have our 2 wingers playing off him. I think most games this season we'll probably see Brownhill in that further advanced position for me, just to have a little bit more solidity. And I think he wants another midfielder to slot in alongside Cullen within Bahima and Lokonga, of course. So yeah, that's where I see Amdouni fitting in. And when you think about it, you could have a front 3 of Amdouni, Zaroury, Benson, and then Renman coming in, maybe Tella, maybe another winger. We've got a lot of exciting options. Haven't we? Obviously, Obafemi's going to be injured for the start of the season. We've got Jay there, Foster. Listen, we'll see. It's going to take a lot of improvement for Foster to be good enough for the Premier League next season.
Yeah, I agree.
But let's see on that. Let's not write him off yet. And then obviously Wout's going to come into the equation, isn't he now? Unless he does leave, that's going to be. There's been a lot of discussion around that, hasn't it? And I'm really fascinated to see how he goes. But I think with Amdouni coming in, it's the same as Trafford, isn't it? We're not paying big money for these young lads to sit on the bench. They're going to be given the responsibility and, to to play, the starting role for us. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think he'll play more of a number 9 than a number 10, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. He could play him like number 10, and he might play kind of a more of a target man in Wout or Jay up
Yeah,
front.
that's true.
We shall see.
Yeah, I guess we're hearing reports, George, that Redmond's going to sign tomorrow as well, which, listen, I think that's a great signing from a squad perspective and the experience. And when we need a player just to come in when we have the inevitable challenges that come with Premier League and we need to get the job done, I think Redmond's a great signing. But given, if that does happen tomorrow as expected, do we think that this might be the end of the Tella pursuit? To me, I think the trail's gone completely cold, despite our fan base, the hashtag Free Tella, trying to do their best to get him. To me, it feels like that one's done and dusted.
I don't necessarily agree, to be honest, because we know that Kompany doesn't mind stockpiling positions with players. I mean, look at the striker role now. We're not
board. Our chairman might, George.
So we're not gonna play more than one striker per game, and we've got 5 strikers at the club now with Obafemi, Foster, Rodriguez, Weghorst, and Amdouni. And I think you're looking there just on the striker situation. I think Amdouni and Weghorst are your first 2 in the pecking order, and then J-Rod as a third option. I think Latta Foster, like Rich said, he'll have a lot of improvements to do, but we really want to give him an opportunity. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, but he did a really good interview with South African media, quite revealing about how he'd struggled in his first few months with Burnley, just with homesickness and living alone and whatnot. So you never know what these all off the field issues can play out onto the pitch. So we're really stocked in the striker position, but so it just goes to show that I don't think we really mind stockpiling positions and having more depth than necessarily we would have done in the past. Tella, for me, is a signing, and I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but that was never going to be done quick because Southampton obviously don't want to let him go.
Okay.
I think it could go up to the 31st of August because it all depends on what price they're willing to sell him for. And the closer it gets to the deadline, the more that price will drop because they know they can't just, last week they'll have said, 25 million, they'd have been silly. And I think throughout the course of July, August, we'll see those links starting to resurface because he's a player that's already fitted into the squad. He knows this system inside out. I really don't think we'd turn down being able to spend 15 million on him. I really don't.
I'll just come into that as well. I think George makes some excellent points about Southampton's valuation, and this is it's a really fascinating one to actually know how much Tella is worth. And I'm so torn on this because Tella's not a young. I wouldn't class Tella as a young player anymore. No. He's 24. Yes, there's been injuries, but he's never done it in the Premier League. He had a great season last season, and he got better. But I will say it again, it is an absolute chasm between the Premier League and the Championship. Yeah. It is so big, and I think it's getting bigger all the time because of the money. You look at the lower teams now in the Premier League and the money that's being spent. So it's a real difficult one, and I think that's why Burnley's holding off yet, because they might think that, you look at Amdouni, he's probably cost not much more than what Tella's done, but he's done it on a European level, and this is the difference now. And I think Southampton, it all depends on who else they sign. On who else they sell. I think we've just, I've just seen tonight Liverpool selling Henderson. He's going to Saudi Arabia. Fabinho's going, which is an interesting, I think at some point we'll have to talk about that Saudi Arabia situation because I think that's going to have a massive implications on football moving forward.
It is.
But
especially as just a very quick one, Rich, especially as they're not paying massive transfer fees, they're paying massive wages. So the money's not coming into our league.
Exactly. It's a really interesting one. And how are the top European clubs going to, for me, they can't fight against that. So they're going to have to join forces, a little bit like the Live Golf maybe. But anyway, that's a side point. But so say now Liverpool come in for a player like Lavia from Southampton and pay 50, 60 million, who is a really top talent. Say Ward-Prowse goes, that could be another 30, 40 million in the coffers. Southampton aren't at a liberty to sell Tella then. No. And they know they've got a ready-made player there who can literally take them up from the Championship. So I think Burnley are kind of looking at it, weighing up their options with Tella because they're kind of thinking the reason they've not paid what they're paying now is because they don't think he's worth it.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of Burnley fans who disagree with that at the moment, but I actually think we're doing the right thing with Tella, just biding our time for the moment. It's the same when, it's the same with all these lads who we say are great players, your Bensons, the Ruries, Cullens, Matson, obviously we're going to come on to, Bayer. Until they step foot on that Premier League, it's a different beast. It is a completely different beast. Remember when Arfield was like the best Championship player and he wasn't good enough for the Prem? It's kind of so... I think Teller's a better
Josh
player.
Brownhill might fall into that category as well.
Brownhill's going to be a really interesting one as well. Yeah.
I think he'll be better. I think he's going to be better in the Premier League in VK's side, particularly with what he's learned last season than he was maybe because it was completely brand new in his last Premier League season. He was in a team that wasn't quite
very defensive too, and he played in a two in midfield.
So I'm interested to see that.
Brownhill's one of them players where you realise how effective he is when he's not in the team. But
same with Jack Cork before Jack Cork,
so,
good.
Yeah.
The last word then I think from our listeners, we put a couple of polls in the field today just to basically see with Amdouni coming into the squad whether or not in terms of pure strikers we were done. The votes on both social media channels are really split at the moment. 44-51 people saying yes we're done and other people saying no we need one more. I think over on literally really split as to whether or not they think we need another one. So I suspect we're probably done. But I think, we're expecting tomorrow the announcement of James Trafford, which is a whole other podcast and one we're extremely excited about, and Redmond as well. So we'll give you a reaction to that later. George, just picking up very quickly, you saw some reports on social media today that we've now entered back in the race to be favourites again to sign Ian Matson back on loan. Have you got any update on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my update, to be fair. It's Andy Jones, but he said that Burnley are now seen as the front runners to sign Matson, like you say, on loan. It'll be a season-long loan because the asking price of 20 million was deemed too high. But the likes of Forest and West Ham are also interested. For me, right, I'll say this first as well, because I feel like a lot of people at the end of last season decided that Taylor was out the door and would leave this summer, but I by the looks of it, I don't think that'll be the case.
No, I agree.
I really, we've got if say Taylor left, we've got no left backs. Like, I really don't see that being the case. I think he'll keep Taylor as a secondary option. He's proven himself in the Premier League before. Whether or not he flourishes in Kompany systems, another matter. But yeah, on Matson, I'm pretty much in the camp. It'd be a good sign to bring him back on loan.
I think so too.
A no-brainer. Once you get a player of that quality to fill a position like left back for free, essentially for the season, apart from his wages, why not? It might be the case that in 12 months, Chelsea reassess their options and think he's surplus to requirements here. Burnley, you can have him for 10, 15 million. I just think he did so well for us last year, though.
We need him this year. Rich, is that true? Rich has just put in our chat box. So Matson needs to sign a new deal for that loan to happen.
Yeah, so for a player to be loaned, I think it's to another Premier League club, or it might be different. He's in the last year of his contract now, so he needs to sign a contract extension to be loaned out.
So you can't go on loan on the last. You've got to stay with your parent club in the last. Oh God,
year of your contract. Yeah, it's quite I only heard that in these Matson discussions.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
But then again, it's Matson is such a difficult one because the 20 million is a lot of money, but I don't know how old Matson is. Is he 2021? So he's like 3 or 4 years.
21.
How old is he, George?
He's 21.
How old?
He's 21.
Yeah. So he's 3 years younger than Tella. And I'll put this question back to you. Who's got a higher ceiling, Tella or Matson?
Matson, without a doubt.
Oh, yeah, by a long way.
So this is the thing where we're at with the moment. And I know we laugh in our podcast group, and I know I do. It's like 15 million bid FC. But that seems to
every deal.
because we've got so many positions to fill. Like you said, left back, we filled the goalie, centre mid, maybe another winger. We can't just put out 25 million on one player.
Yeah, I agree.
And push that boundary out a little bit more. So Matson's, I'd love to have Matson back. And I think a loan might suit all parties. But George made a point there, which I agree with and I don't agree with. Let's say Matson has a great season. Say he signs a contract extension to come back on loan, which he has to, and he's got another 2 or 3 years left, and he has a really good season in the Prem, they're going to be demanding way more than 20 million.
Yeah, so why don't we just sign him now and we take advantage?
So like, if he has a good season, they're not going to be demanding less because
and if he has a bad season, we don't, you know what I mean? It's like
we don't want him. So
where are you going to portion the risk?
Yeah, this is where Burnley's kind of. It's like obviously, Natalie. You know, I'm going to use your analogy with Poole and pushing your chips into, like, you know, Burnley can't just push all the kind of like the cards and all the money just into one signing. Can they, at the moment, they've got to like spread it out a little bit evenly, and this is where you're hearing kind of. I think that Sasha said that on the BOLM podcast, which was really good as well, about kind of the casting the net far out and wide. And this is kind of where maybe deals are coming out to the blue a little bit. And I think
that's good, though. We've wanted that for ages.
Yeah, of course. And then this is where, to me, I know George isn't as keen, but I think a Redmond signing, or whether we're signing a Townsend, makes sense because it's a squad player. He's not someone who's going to start every week, and it's a free transfer just to fit a hole. So I think it's kind of like we've been clever with what we're doing. We kind of go, right, we'll sign good young players for decent money where we can make value on them, and then we'll fill the squad up with like free transfers of older pros who we know can do a job. And I think we've only got obviously 2 domestic loans, haven't we? So I think we've got to be really clever with who we decide to kind of like get in that this change.
Would you, George, use the 2 Premier League loan signings to be Matson and Harwood-Bellis? I would. I think that's a good use of both of them. Taking aside Richard's really good point about us signing Matson on the cheap now and profiting, if we can't, do you think that those 2 are a good allocation of our 2 domestic loans?
No, because I don't think Harwood-Bellis on loan makes sense. You know, I think we've got enough centre-backs. If we were to sign him, it'd have to be, it just makes sense to be a permanent deal. So Harwood-Bellis, not for me, but yeah, may as well bring Matson in on loan. And we've also been linked with that Palmer from City. You know, he could be a good loan signing.
Oh, yeah.
I do worry, you know, with loan signings, for me, they're not really for me when you're in the Premier League, because if they're going out on loan, they're not good enough to cut it. I know it's different when they're coming from a Chelsea or a City, but I'm not sure if Palmer would get enough game time to warrant coming out on loan to us. So I don't really see that one happening. I just think that's more of the newspapers making an easy link between Kompany and City.
Always. Okay, let's wrap this up. Very quick fire question for both of you before we let our listeners go. Rate the announcement video out of 10. Rich, go.
Yeah, being a massive Teletubbies fan still, no joke. I loved it growing up. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I thought I loved it. I thought it was innovative, creative, and got something like nearly 7 million views.
Yeah, loved it.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
9 out of 10. I love it. You said 9, didn't you? 9 out of 10. George, rate the transfer reveal video.
I think we're a victim of our own success, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 because these videos are 2 a dozen these days. Every club does it because everyone's copied us. So
we do it the best, the original.
No, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. We're at Grimsby or at Rochdale the other week, or someone in low leagues did a fantastic one with Phoenix Knights. That was an absolutely brilliant one. So no, for me, they're just everywhere at the moment. And Teletubbies, we're good, but it should have been safe for Nathan Tella.
Oh, I know. Somebody say that. Somebody sent me that on Twitter and made me really sad. So yeah, good. Excellent. That is all we have got time for. Let's wrap that up there. You never know, with the pending announcement of James Trafford and Nathan Redmond coming through the door tomorrow, we may see you quicker than you expect. And in the meantime, please like, comment and subscribe to the channel. It does help our numbers grow. And you can listen to the No Nay Never podcast for the analysis show and the preview show twice a week through your usual podcast provider. Please go there, search for No Nay Never and hit that subscribe button. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been No Nay Never. Until next time. The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. Natalie Bromley is the host and editor, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The analysis show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Richard Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, Adam Dennett and Robbie Kopak. Our music is provided by George Gaskill and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Our thanks as ever go to our partners TalkSport. We are as ever proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network.